let's get into a different subject. There's a little bit of turmoil, and I think a little bit is underselling. I think there's like a 5-alarm fire going on inside of USTA player development right now. So for those of you who don't know who JOSÉ HIGUERAS is, he is one of the best coaches of our time. Starting with, what's going to happen is I'm going to name his credentials and I'm going to forget them because there are so many. Working with Jim Courier, Courier still says he's the smartest tennis mind, and he owes his career and his successes to JOSÉ HIGUERAS. Is help with Roger, has helped with Pete Sampras. Was involved in player development for the USTA from, I'll get the years slightly wrong, 2008-ish till recently. Has had a long celebrated career coaching and teaching, and he was a former pro player himself, a very accomplished pro player in his own right. Sent out, and you got this email, basically a plea to anyone involved with USTA player development, basically throwing a couple of board members, Brian Vahaley and Vanya King, very under the bus and in no uncertain terms. Tell me about your take on this email. Let's call balls and strikes. Let's try to call them as fairly as possible. But I don't know that I've ever seen an email like this inside of an organization. It was pretty cutting, I think.
Yeah. I think email we should back up a little. This is really, it's almost reads almost like a cry for help. It's like 2,000 words. And as you say, names. I mean, this is somebody, not a lot of subtlety here. And as you say, I mean, this is not, we're talking about Casper Ruud. I mean, JOSÉ HIGUERAS is not necessarily known as one of the great hotheads. This is a well-regarded figure in tennis, former top 10 player. I think I've looked at, he's 70, 71 years old now, probably. He worked with Roger Federer. He also worked for many, many years with USTA player development. He's not happy. There have been some budget cuts. That's been no great secret. USTA player development has always been, as I'm sure you yourself can remember, right? There's always going to be second guessing, and there's going to be arguments over funding, and this player, this section, this coach got too much, this one didn't get enough. How could they have whiffed on player X? And it's kind of the nature of any sort of sports prognostication like that. But yeah, I mean, JOSÉ HIGUERAS sent this in. I got it, but I was one of many, many people. This is not someone he just sent to a few people. I've known him for a good while and consider him, so someone you can call and get a straight answer, a straight shooter. But I'm not sure a 2,000 word email of this nature. And I actually asked him if I could publish it because I wasn't sure sort of what the purpose was. And he said, please, I can't fight this battle alone. So, I mean, I have no problem. We can put this on the show notes if you want. But my point is, this was not meant as sort of an aggrieved employee. He wants this read by a lot of people. This is really sort of a cri de coeur. This is really sort of a cry for help for someone who clearly feels passionate about this. He has a lot of grievances. Some of these are very specific. Some of these are general. Some of these are about the state of, the funding that probably is too in the weeds for most people. But yeah, this was quite a shot across the bow.
When did you receive this email?
Oh man. I mean, I woke up to it. So it came last Wednesday night. What about you? You got it too.
Well, I didn't receive it. I wasn't on the email list. I received, so the intro, and this is like a mix of, so let me be fully clear. I am wrestling with my past grievances from my own experiences, probably a little bit of ego and insecurity from what I've offered versus what the feedback has been given from the USTA, and we're talking over the last 20 years. And so a lot of the notes in this email, like for instance, the heading, the intro to this email, I'm reading it off my phone from Lindsay Davenport, who is actually the one who sent it to me, says, "Dear members of the American tennis family." So when did you get that email?
This would have been Wednesday night.
Wednesday night. Okay. Well, I received this from Lindsay Friday at 1 p.m. So 2 days after you. And then I did end up getting it directly from Jose, but it was I read it for the first time on Saturday morning. So I don't know. Maybe I'm like listen, if it's American Tennis Family, maybe I'm like a weird cousin or like something like I don't like you know. Anyways, so yeah. So anyways, John, it's not you, it's me. But it's interesting because I obviously you never want to see cuts to player development. All I want is for us to have a million Grand Slam champions all the time. Now, what the question ends up being to me is, okay, just cutting things for the sake of cutting things while, you know, allegedly throwing $1 million holiday parties as a board and voting for those and voting against player funding is insane, right? Putting, you know, renovations to the Orlando facility under the player development budget is insane to me. That's not player development. That's new tiles in bathrooms or fixing, you know, something else. So I am sympathetic to the player development side. There was a lot in this. I felt like the email kind of boiled the ocean a little bit. When it was defending the track record of player development, it was basically anyone who's been at a camp or, you know, has received any amount of financial support over any amount of time basically was rolled into the statistics of successes for player development over a certain moment in time. And I can't speak to that because I had zero involvement. I got cut from USTA funding when I was 16. They funded a bunch of different players, and I think they did me the biggest favor of my life. You know, I went and found, so I get cut, which is fine. It's like, you know, someone has to get cut. There's always a last minute. There's always a first guy out. And then I found a coach, Tariq Benhabiles, right? Which luckily he lived down the street, so there wasn't a lot of expense with having to travel to a place to train, all of those added costs. He lived right there. So our trajectory goes, I go from 50 in the world, and this was not under Jose's watch. I'm just telling you what you hear a lot. My story is not unique, but for a long time, it felt like the USTA was happy they wanted the credit to be for a logo and not for a flag. And so I went to number 1 in the world in juniors, no involvement from anyone on the USTA side. They say we help players. I say, how do you help players? They go, oh, we watch matches. I'm like, well, I don't know how that helps me. Okay, great. So then they get to the point where like, you know what, we would love. They're back on board. I'm number 1 in the world in juniors, about to turn pro, go from cut to, you know, one of the best prospects in a while. The proposal was we will fund everything, training, expenses, travel, all of it. You just have to work with one of our coaches. And so I had the decision as a 17-year-old. So you want me to leave the coach that is directly responsible for this ascent for a paycheck, and so it's someone under your umbrella. And at 17, I realized that was short-sighted because forever, if anything, no one knows who gets credit for what. Like forever, I played Davis Cup, therefore I was probably a USTA guy. Had no communication, not even a little bit. You know, after a certain point, there was no funding, and I'm sure they'd say, well, wait, you know, you get paid for Davis Cup. That comes from the USTA. Okay, if you want to, that's fine. That's a fee for service, not development. I was, you know, already, you know, whatever it was. Yeah, so I'm reading through this email, and it's like basically saying like it was unprecedented success. Basically, they carved out, you know, the years I played and then it was 2009 to 19. But like the metrics, like I'll give you one specific one. And so I would love it if Jose would choose to come on the pod, open invite, to do that. I'd prefer not for us to have like a whole song and dance before. I'd actually just want everyone to hear this conversation for clarity. But it says from 1995 to mid 2008, Team USA, which is very vague, had 2 Junior Grand Slam singles champions. 2 Junior Grand Slam singles champions. I was one of them. I don't know if I was both of them. I won 2 slams. I'm not sure. I'm sure I'm not, I don't know if it's 2 people or 2 titles. So all of the stats have like that thing where you don't quite understand what's being said. And so the counter to that, to basically talk about the successes since then, from mid 2008 to 2023, Team USA had 22 Junior Grand Slam champions. So it went from Junior Grand Slam singles champions from 95 to mid 2008. That was the precedent for comp. And then went to 22 Grand Slam champions. Now, I haven't looked it up yet. I'm hoping some people can go back and tell me how many of those are doubles championships, where in the first stat, it was very specific about being a singles champ. And then this is why we have so many good pros today. It's because of us and the slams that we won. That is an 11x increase in Junior Grand Slam winners. What it also overlooks completely is Serena was winning Grand Slams at an age where she was eligible to play in Junior Grand Slams. So your little Serena was winning Grand Slams in 1999. So you carved out her winning majors with, by the way, she wasn't involved in your programs at all. And Venus wasn't involved in your programs at all. 0. So you're carving out her pro successes to make a very deceiving claim to success and then say, this is why we have so many good pros today. Because some more people won doubles Grand Slams in juniors. It just is, the email kind of reeks of these. If you're from America, you fall under our successes as far as stats. And it's just kind of weird. And I never question the passion. Some of the best people I know forever on earth, Dean Goldfein comes to mind. Just one of my favorite humans ever. The intent isn't wrong, but the way that the email, at least the way that I read it when Lindsay sent it to me, I read it 3 days after you, apparently. You qualified, and you qualified as American tennis family
and friends.
And friends, yeah. So I apparently I was on the acquaintances list, but it's just kind of full of these anecdotal, what services have we provided? And it's like strength and conditioning, mental skills, performance analytics, athletic training. I feel like it. You know that you know that scene in Step Brothers where they're at the Catalina wine mixer, and it's like, why should you invest? Media, TV, music, prestige, worldwide, wide. Yeah, so it's like athletic training, physio support, coaching. But here's what I need, right? If we're having a serious conversation where I want to be fully in, because I want to be in, I'm on the player development side. I want to be both feet in, cannonball, ready to roll. Data. We have this many players, and not like it's weird because when they used to tell a story, it was top 10 players, right? And that was like the metric, and now it's top 100 players, and now so it's like this squeeze of statistics to celebrate, to throw parade for things, and it's like, oh, we help players. I'm like, how? Well, they come to camps, and I'm like, man, you're taking credit for like a semifinal run at the U.S. Open because someone came to camps, when largely Ben Shelton was with his dad, and the University of Florida has produced players. I don't think Coco had much involvement. It's just a weird thing, and I want to be in on it. But I think the way to win this argument is pure data and not cherry picking the start of a point and its counter being completely different statistical things, statistical comps.
I like data as much as anyone, and I think I would agree with you. This is very cherry picked. I mean, the two best players of the last 25 years are both American on the women's side. They have combined for more than 30 majors, and central to their narrative is the whole point that they completely went around the junior tennis establishment. So it's great that you can say, hey, you know, and since 1999, we've had all these American champions when the two with the most majors intentionally avoided the junior tennis infrastructure. I'm not sure how much clout that has. You know, we're also, you're right. You cherry picked the Serbian Federation's doing amazingly. They've got like 25 majors in the last. I think that apart from the data, which I think you're right. I mean, some players, they show up to a camp. Others, the USDA has been integral in their success. And we ought to have, you know, instead of just saying, hey, they play for the United States, they're in. I think we need a little bit more of a drill down there. I just think there's before we even get to the data, fundamental question. If the USDA's mission is to grow and promote the sport of tennis, is this the best way to do it? I look around and I see the French Federation. They run one of the majors. They have, you know, not a lot of active French players have won majors. In fact, I think the number is 0. How many Australian players that are active have won majors? Ash Barty, now retired, 0. Andy Murray had this wonderful mother who drove him in a van around Scotland. I'm not sure he was really part of the system. So is it a little strange that the 4 majors that have all of these revenues aren't the ones producing the best players? I wonder if this, again, this whole mission of growing and promoting the sport of tennis, should there be more investment or less investment? And might it be a disguised blessing to sort of let the chips fall where they may? And, you know, there are a lot of players from a lot of countries that don't have majors, that don't get tens of thousands of dollars from foundations and federations that have done very well for themselves.
Yeah, the money for training has to come from somewhere, something. You don't want to force the decision. Where we've heard a lot of success stories, Sharapova, we heard it on this podcast from Max Eisenbud, moving to America with $300 with her father. IMG had to pay for that. So you also don't want to have to force that decision for the people that don't become Sharapova, right? Like there are a lot of misses with people thinking in every sport that their kid is the best, and it doesn't work out that well a lot of the time. So it's interesting, and I do think it's a good opportunity to kind of do checks and balances. And one thing I will say is, like, my situation where it was a flag versus a logo, I think that's largely been acknowledged, remedied. So don't take my reality from 25 years ago. It's still a source of bitterness for me. It always was. But I think they're doing a better job of it. I did ask one of my friends, I said, okay, so he made that point, and I said, okay, I get that. I accept that. I think that's probably right. So what's the example of, like, the one person where it's like, okay, we don't want anything. We're gonna fund your situation because it seems great. And the answer was someone who has become top 100 in like the last 6 months. And I just, it's a weird thing. And I see all this kind of celebration of happy, we're there for you, we support, we do this. It's just never been my experience. I've offered to help for free, and maybe that just means that I don't know anything or I can't add value. And maybe that's accurate. I don't know, but it's just a weird thing where whoever takes any job, I get one phone call, and there are all these things where it's like, we can't wait, we'll talk again, we'll check, and I never hear from anyone ever again. It happens over and over and over and over again. And so it's just weird when this type of situation comes up and I'm reading these emails, and it just hasn't been my experience at all. And I know a lot of people that it hasn't been their experience at all either. I'm not trying to make it simple, because it's certainly not simple. We have the biggest country. Are you going to make a kid move from Northern Oregon if he's to Orlando when he's 12 or 13 years old? That's impossible. In France, you can drive to the National Center from pretty much anywhere, regardless of where you are. It's a massive problem. What I don't like, I think maybe there should just be a simple, let's just back of the napkin here, Mike. Let's make the constant, as we're making cuts, the budget for I'm gonna get in trouble here. The budget for player development should never be under the budget for executives making the decisions about player development.
Well, I mean, I think the difficult part about it is,
is that just, can we just make that like a baseline?
Yeah, I mean, I think that should be the standard. Yeah.
Like a minimal.
At minimal. And they're pretty much actually equal.
Yeah, if the execs are making, I don't know, I don't know what the number would be. Let's just say if they're making around $14 million, then player development should make that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably like 10 to 14 million, and player development probably gets 10 million to 12 million.
Only based on 2022 tax returns that we're still trying to figure out, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I actually found USDA's 2022 the player development tax returns, which has the same address and everything, and Lou Shear's in charge of that, and all these guys are in charge of that. It actually has a net loss in 2022 of over $1 million, and its current assets, net assets or fund balances in 2022 was negative $12,871,000.
For what now?
This is for the player development incorporated.
Well, that's a little deceiving too, because they take money from the U.S. Open, which you could argue is funded by night sessions, of which Coco perform. Yeah, there's a longer conversation potentially there. But
I think the question is how much of the overall revenue from the top co that's making $65 million a year plus should be allocated towards the future generation,
investing back in the business.
Yeah, I mean, is it
like
is it 10%, 20%? I mean, are you investing in growth, or are you investing in?
Well, if you made it a percentage basis when the U.S. Open has its biggest year ever last year, then that the player development budget would grow because of it, not get a haircut by 40%. Correct?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not great at math, but
the prior year, so the prior year contributions were almost 14 million, and then in 22 it was almost only 11 million.
Well, I mean, it seems like and I don't want to do anyone's job for them, right? I don't want to. I told you my own grievances. Now let's. It's easy to point out problems, and we'll get to the PTPA here in a second. But solutions are harder, right? Now, what do we have that is a percent? What sort of revenues could possibly be coming that Lou Shear might have inside information on or be driving? Is the U.S. Open part of any power roll up that is going to create billions in revenue?
What do we want to answer that?
Do we? Sorry.
How do we want to answer that? Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
No, I mean, isn't this part sort of? This is sort of the one of the fundamental.
Are we doing earmarks?
Plus,
are we doing earmarks? Like, but we're part of this. But like, maybe we like if I'm player development, I'm like, great, no problem. We'll take the haircut now, but we'll also participate in profits from this potential deal. And maybe Tennis France does the same thing. I don't know. Seems like there's some money that's hanging out in tennis.
What do you think is the best way to grow and promote tennis? I think that's like the fundamental question here, right?
We're gonna get in so much trouble. Oh,
all right, forget it.
I can see Mike sweating already.
I mean, I would honestly, I would spend 3 or 4 days reviewing these tax returns, but then also doing.
We can do another show next week.
I know, and not saying that any of it is uncouth, right? Like it's so structured in such a way where, are other organizations in other countries structured in this same way, where it is so hard to track the actual trickle-down effect, and really what is the important thing is when you're building a tall building is maintaining the foundation, the most important thing, or putting the shiniest thing on top of that building, and praying that you did it right at the bottom. And I that's what I don't understand about, player development in general, especially when you talk about the biggest names in the sport over the last 20 years from the American side, and the majority of them didn't run through the program.
Yeah. I just had this moment, and it's already recorded. This is getting put out either way, but I'm pretty sure I will have to pay for every ticket that I ever request to the U.S. Open ever again.
You weren't on the you weren't at the A list of the wedding before this. You're by the.
I was already not on the email list.
Yeah. Hey, we'll send you the Zoom link for our wedding.
Listen, I'm happy with someone being mad at me, but also tell me where the lies are. You can be mad at me because of feelings, but tell me what part of this and why, what we're getting wrong about these things. I honestly, and I'm not saying that in a sarcastic way, I want to get smarter about all of this. I would love it to be this like utopia between player development and all of the other growth mechanisms that are seemingly around the corner in tennis.
Yeah, I mean, how much of this is just the fundamental tension that goes on here, right? You have this great 2-week event, you've got luxury suites, you've got media rights deals, you've got all this hospitality, you've got signage, and this is run like the big-time sporting event it is. The revenues from the USDA are, whatever they're, $750 million, but it is a nonprofit, and its mission is to grow and promote tennis. I guess my question is just, when did we decide that player development is the best way to grow and promote tennis? It seems to, at some level, it seems the reason, hey, look, if we can mint another Andy Roddick or Serena Williams, that's great. But I just wonder if we are not looking at the wrong avenues of growth. And if the overall health of the sport, I mean, it's sort of purposely vague, grow and promote tennis. Does that mean recreational players? Does that mean patch up the tennis court down at the local park? Or does that mean go look for the LeBron James that's going to transform the sport at the highest level? It's sort of intentionally vague, but I think that's where a lot of the problems stem. You've got a lot of money sloshing through, and we see all the consumption and the wretched excess and the ice sculptures and the $40 hamburgers. And then the flip side is, what do we do with that money? Well, it's really vague. Most companies have a fair, that there's either quarterly pressures, we know what we have to do if we're Amazon, or there is a fairly specific mission. Grow and promote tennis could mean anything. Why didn't the USDA, do anything? Go set up your own social media channel for tennis. Maybe that grows and promotes tennis more than nurturing Ben Shelton.
Yeah. Who was when
he's
it was
doing
developed at the University of Florida.
Just for clarity, the USDA's actual legal description of what the organization does is to promote and develop the growth of tennis as a means of healthful recreation and physical fitness. So,
hey, what was the Catalina wine mixer?
Guys.
What was the Catalina wine mixer? Hold on. Strength, mental skills, performance, athletic training, coaching, prestige worldwide. Why? I asked a crazy question. I was having breakfast when this was all kind of going down and the votes were happening last year at the U.S. Open, and a friend asked me to go to breakfast and was basically like, we could use your voice in like a public voice because you're not tied to anything, and that's why we're able to do this podcast in a pretty unbiased fashion, because I don't really have a job in the general infrastructure of tennis, which helps. And he said, well, these cuts are happening. I go, okay, cuts are happening. I have a crazy question. And he goes, what? I go, where is that money being allocated? He's like, I don't know. I go, then this is a dumb conversation. Because it's being taken from here, but it's given to here under all of the things, the boiling of an ocean that Mike just read, in the kind of general vagueness, which allows them leeway. Where is that money being allocated? And if the answer is I don't know, then we haven't invested enough time in this conversation yet to be taking it out and asking for help publicly.
Again, I go back to this vague mandate, and maybe it's allocated. We talked last week about, the USTA seems to be one of the prime stakeholders of this Premier Tour. The USTA has an investment in labor count. I mean, there are other ways to grow and promote tennis, even for health and fitness.
Very
whatever
true.
It is. No, I think you're right. I mean, I think your instincts are right too. We need better data all around. I mean, you and I we're all reading the 990. Even that sort of prompts as many questions as it answers. But this is we're not the first people to have this conversation. We won't be the last, but it does seem to be a bit of an inflection point for the USDA.
It's pretty. So you're saying that, and I literally just went through my brain files, and like maybe the biggest influential moment of my youth as it pertains to tennis and it being like it becoming a North Star wasn't a camp. It wasn't, it was going to the Davis Cup final in 1992 and being absolutely blown away. So by you saying maybe it's an investment in Laver Cup, someone goes to that and all of a sudden a 9-year-old is like, this is it. So fully agree with what you're suggesting. How do you value an investment in Laver Cup, even though you can't actually follow the trail of success, but also you can't deny its impact on potentially growing the game, which is the mission statement. Player development is not in the mission statement. Maybe it should be. Maybe it should be. But under what we're talking about, if you're investing in the game in physical fitness, which is okay, like I'm glad they separated that from tennis because those are very different things, right? Fuck.
I do have a question actually. When you think about the role of the USTA, right, and you think about the role of Major League Baseball, or you think about the role of the NFL, right? The USTA is, in my mind, like in that same realm of like structural organization. Shouldn't their role be actually to build more fans versus build more players? Shouldn't they be investing more money and creating more value?
Well, they would. Listen. I know I'm like straddling the line of both sides of them, but like investing money to put on the U.S. Open, it is maybe the best sporting event on earth. So I think it is a separate player development. Where does it fit into the hierarchy? Because they will invest in things like it is. They built the Orlando training center, which apparently now is going to have no coaches. But I don't think investment in the game has been lacking. I really don't. Like, let's not, just take a shit shower and call it a day. Like, I think there is some nuance to this conversation, specifically what is the best avenue to make as many good players as possible? Do we go wide? Do we go deep? For a while, it was like, we're going to be like stock traders and we're going to predict our best 4. And frankly, they fucking missed a lot, right? So maybe that's not the best avenue. Maybe it's a volume play. I don't know, but I like this conversation because hopefully it gets to whatever the next version is of player development. And I also applaud José Higueras because a lot of these conversations normally take place in secrecy or person to person or, emails between like him saying it out loud. Even if I disagree with a lot of parts of it and feel like I would love to be a lawyer with these statistics. Like I would love to just go through them. I could win a case. I really am positive I could. But he just did it. And now we're talking about it. And even if we don't agree on everything, I agree on intent. I agree on passion. I agree on all of us wanting as many great American players forever and a day. Now, do I agree with the way they've gone about it always? No. Do they care? Probably not. Well represented. But, I like that everyone's just saying the quiet parts out loud. I like that. I like transparency. We talked about it last episode with something totally different. Transparency, I think, shortens the runway to an answer and to a solution. So not an easy email to send out to everyone. Pissed that I was on the B team for getting it, but that's my own problem, my own ego. I also got a text from a friend of mine who was like, wow, Jose, like he tried to get a hold of you. He asked me for your number. I'm like, he's been in charge of player development for like 20 years. And that's the problem. He had to ask you for my number 20 years later. Maybe my fault too. I don't know, but hopefully good times ahead. Hopefully some clarity. I think we need to invest in players. I would like a longer conversation on how to best do that. Because if we've produced a Coco, a Ben, I'd like 3 Cocos and 3 Bens, right? And actually have an accurate accounting for data, dollars in versus ranking. If we put very minimal money into Ben Shelton and he's, to your point, Mike, and he's a semifinalist at the U.S. Open and 15 in the world after going to college, then it's a different conversation. You don't have to fund someone from 10 years old or fund their situation if it's a positive one. They don't have to be under your umbrella for American tennis to thrive.